So, babe, I have a question for you. What is the one question that you get asked more often about living full time in an RV, and how do you answer it?
I think the question we both have to struggle with is when people say, when we're meeting for the first time, where do you live?
Ah,
And such a simple question can have such a not simple answer. And it's interesting how we both kind of pause and
yeah,
go, well,
it's a and how do you actually answer that?
most of the time I'll say we live full time in an RV.
Yeah,
And if I think it's going to be more of a local question, then I'll say we live in Aransas Pass or we live in the Dallas area or something to that point. What do you usually
yeah,
say?
I always answer wherever the RV is parked.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So, gang, today we are actually going to answer the four biggest questions that we get asked all the time by people who want to know about full time RV living. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. My name is Jim
and I'm Christy.
Jacobus with Joyhauling, Living the RV Life with Jim and Christie Jacobus. And like I said, today we're going to tackle four big questions that people ask us about full time living in an RV, and that we have to actually ask ourselves before we went full time in an RV. And babe, I'm going to ask you the first. I'll ask you the question, and let's get your response to that. How do you two guys live together in such a small space without killing each other?
That is something that I think is actually a misconception that people have, is that you're going to spend most of your time inside, when the beauty of RV living is you get to enjoy thousands of acres of land because you're usually in a beautiful destination. That's not to say we don't have to adjust to living in a small space and adjusting to that small space together. But I think there's a couple of things that you want to keep in mind is we still both have our lives going on. We're still doing our own interest, in our case, our own jobs. So the time together while we're in the same location is still focused on different activities. The second thing, like I said, is we take advantage of the things around us. So we're not just in this 430 square feet, but we're using the outside. We're using the things around us. We're taking advantage of things that we might have not when we were in the traditional, as they call it, sticks and bricks, because we had the comfort and the space
Yeah.
to use our own resource refuge in our home. So now we kind of take advantage of the things around us. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, yeah. Let me ask you a question though before I add my 2 cents worth. Does it ever feel small to you?
There are a couple of times that I must admit that it does feel small, and it's mainly if we're trying to entertain people or
Okay.
we have different people and the weather has forced us to come inside. But other than that, I think it really is, we have plenty of space. And that kind of goes back to a mindset we'll talk about in just a little bit. But I think there's another part of this question that needs to be answered, and it's probably more about the relationship. The
Yeah.
second part of that, like, we're only around each other all the time, or it's just you and I in this lifestyle. And I think if you look at that standpoint, we have had to modify some of the things that we do together and we do separately.
Yeah.
And so I do think there is a fear when people go full time. And this is one that we hear a great deal, that I'm just going to have to be around my partner 24/7. And that's not really the case for us.
Yeah.
And even if it were, we have adjusted some of the things we do so that we still have our own interests. But I think we've also used this as an opportunity to grow closer.
Yeah. Well, so my thoughts were, the whole idea of killing each other or actually just not getting along very well. Um, we haven't proven that's not true yet. That's for sure.
That's
But the first thing is, and again, we'll spend some time on this in other podcasts. But we were very intentional about the RV we chose,
mhm.
and we chose a Grand Design Momentum 399 toy hauler that has both a side patio and a back patio. And in particular, I like the side patio because when we have both slides open, the side patio is down and the sliding glass doors are open, are exposed where you can see outside, it feels big to me. And so I don't ever feel like we're cramped or that we're closed in. I know you wouldn't mind having some more closet space and for clothes and things like that. But for me, it's never really felt that small, like you said, unless we had a bunch of people in there. But just for the two of us, I've never felt like it was that small. Now, to the relationship side of it all, I think people wonder, will this make our relationship better? Will it make it worse? Will it change us, or anything? I don't think you can be in a confined space like that on a regular basis without it having some impact on you. But reality is, we'll talk about this again in another podcast. We're only 3 podcasts deep, so I have in mind dozens of podcasts that I think we want to do. But I think if you have great communication skills and you're great at solving problems together, you've got a shared vision for what you're doing while you're in this RV and what the lifestyle is, then I think that goes a long way to making the size of the RV matter very little.
Right.
It is just a vehicle to get places. A lot of people think it's just a place to sleep, but for us, it's a lot more than that as well. We have a beautiful RV. There's some pictures there in the background of 3 different parts. There's the TV with the fireplace. There's the, as we like to call it, the one butt kitchen. And then there's our little dinette that doesn't even exist anymore. So I don't feel like it's that small of a space. But again, I think because we have a shared vision for what we're doing and because it takes us to amazing places, how small it is or how big it is really doesn't matter to me. So I don't think it ever has felt small in my case. Like you said, we had a bunch of people over.
And the second question is, what is the downside, or what do you struggle with? What is the downside to RV living, or what is it that you struggle with?
Well, I know we both have the same answers. I'm going to leave the closet space to you to talk about. For me, the only thing that I have felt like we really struggle to deal with when it comes to the RV and the travel and everything is the whole idea of community. When we left home, and we'll talk about that question here in just a minute as well. When we left home and we sold most everything that we had, we kept a little 10 by 10 storage place there in Sugar Land to keep a few things in that we did not want to either give away, throw away, or sell. We got rid of everything. And I did not struggle with that. I know you probably did a little more than I did. I did not struggle with that. But what I struggle with most, or what we found out, I think once we got on the road, is that what was difficult to replace was community. I mean, we had so many communities we were involved in, just our neighborhood, racquetball for me, work for you, involved in our church very, heavily. And all of those were communities that you and I were very much a part of and added a lot of wonderful things to our life. And so I think when we hit the road, I did not miss the pool. I did not miss the 2 stories of house that I was only going upstairs once every 6 months, change filters. I didn't miss any of that. What I missed were the people and the communities that we lived in that were very much a big part of our life because we were as active in those communities as we are in our communities on the road. Now, for me, though, I think we've done a good job of replacing those communities for me with pickleball and all of my friends there, with people in the park here where we stay, people that we meet while we're on the road, communities and Facebook groups and rally groups and things like that. And then very active in the local church here where we are stationed right now for a while. I think that's been the toughest thing for me. That's been the biggest struggle. And I think, again, we've been very intentional about replacing those things with new and exciting and very, very healthy communities. So I know that you would probably answer that as well and maybe some other things. But, I mean, would you add anything to that, or are there anything else that you felt like you struggled with or we struggled with?
I think that was going to be my answer, was the change in community. I was very involved with the Fort Bend Junior Service League, and I'll periodically see posts by them and all the great work that they're doing in the community. And I also miss not only the community of people, but giving back because the Junior Service League is
Yeah.
so involved with charitable events and fundraisers and fun meetings and stuff. I miss that. I miss the camaraderie that comes with being in a league like that. I think I also miss my work companions, both at the counseling center and at the hospital.
Yeah.
I think as we've adjusted, the first year I remember seeing all the Christmas parties and go, oh, we don't get to go to Christmas parties with people. But things just evolve and it changed and it was a transition. I think you pointed out to one of the things I struggled with is adjusting to a smaller space with regards to what we could have.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of times where I would go shopping with people and I didn't really need anything, nor could I buy anything. And one of my favorite pastimes was shopping. I loved to go shopping. Now, on seriously, if I evaluate it, I like to shop, I like to look. I don't necessarily like to buy.
That's true.
So maybe the limitations of space provided its own necessary can't do it anyway. So I think that was one. But anytime we would go to the grocery store, because we're limited on space for things, I couldn't just buy whatever. I had
Yeah.
to be very intentional about what we purchased because otherwise, when we got it home, it became a puzzle trying to put things where they belong. I think I've got good at that in two respects. I think I've stopped buying as many things. I've become minimalistic on the purchasing part. But the other thing is I've gotten better at like arranging things so it makes more sense, especially in the pantry. You had brought up the thing about the clothes because the closet space is a little bit smaller. But I think I've adjusted to that in that I don't, it's the Pareto principle. You only wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time. Well, with knowing that, there are a lot of clothes that I no longer need and I've subsequently got rid of. So
Yeah.
that would be my struggles.
Yeah. And I was thinking also while you were talking there, part of the struggle is because we lived in an RV, we have to keep everything around that you need when you live in an RV. And so I think that can be a challenge as well. So,
Right.
But again, is it really a struggle?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's an adjustment.
are those really struggles? I mean,
Mhm.
challenges and challenges met is the way I prefer to look at
Right.
it. But again, I think that's important though. You just, that's mindset. I mean, we could look at that and go, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. But no, we just have understood that's part of the lifestyle and that's what we're going to do. And we're going to figure a way to work around it, like be intentional about being part of community. And again, I think we've done a good job of that. So let's see here. Number 3. I see, babe. How was it getting rid of all your stuff? So I know you have a completely different answer than I do. So how was it, babe?
I was admittedly much more of a struggle for me. For those of you who can see the pictures on the screen, that is a picture of our home. And one of the things that was a struggle for me is what to do with all the stuff. Because that home represents years of things being accumulated and just special memories that
Oh, yeah.
were associated with it. And I know at the end of the day, it's still just things, but those things represented a lot of times special memories or things that we had worked for to purchase or
Yeah.
had been gifted by people. So I know for me, it was a little bit more of a struggle. And it was one of those things that was strange because we were getting rid of a lot of stuff. And when some of the stuff was going away, it was just like, oh, I'm glad somebody's going to use that. Or, oh, yay, that person got one of my favorite desks. It was the bigger stuff that had more value to people that I think I was fine with letting go of. I was fine with saying, oh, you get our the entertainment center was a little bit different of a story because how they were leaving with that looked so precariously dangerous. I thought I am not going to watch that thing be busted in our driveway. But I think when we would see people and they were excited about having the 1,000 books
Yeah.
that lined the bookshelves, and that how they were going to use that, that was like, oh, that's good. Or when people were taking our dinette sets, and then it was kind of a blessing. It was when they were taking the pictures of framed art that we had, or the crosses on our wall, that I was just like, oh, but oh, okay. Don't look, let it go.
Yeah.
So anyway, so what about for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, all of the above, although it wasn't as difficult for me. A couple of different thoughts that I had about it was one, um, why do we have four of these? Why do we have three of these? Why do we even have one of these?
Hmm.
Was a lesson as we went through and got rid of stuff that I was like, why did we have four of those? Why do we have multiple of something that we don't even need one of? And so I kind of got a sense of how we had collected things over the years that may not really be valuable. I think the things that were of value to us all had memories associated with them, like the cross wall that we sold all the crosses to one guy, and each one of those crosses, or most of those crosses, we bought on our travels to Brazil or Europe or fill in the blank, and so every one of them had a little memory attached to them.
Hmm.
But to me, the memory is enough in my head. Now, maybe one of these days my head won't work so well, but so I didn't struggle with it as much. The lady that bought all of the books in the library, again, 1,000+ books, I'm sure. And every one of those books had a story behind it, where we bought it, why we bought it, when we bought it. But yet she was buying it for a literacy program for kids. And so as I remember it, and I think you'll remember this as well too, it seems like on a lot of occasions, God sent somebody very special for those things.
Hmm.
And so I had a less difficult time knowing that God had ordained that somebody was going to have those crosses, going to have those books. The guy that bought all the cameras, because he is a ghost hunter, and he needed cameras for the ghost hunting and everything. That was a funny story in itself. So I think I remember a lot of that being part of it. I remember selling a lot of things, some things for more than I thought they were, some things for less. Some things had value to people that they didn't necessarily have value to me. And in my mind, somebody was paying me to haul off something I was going to have to throw away later. And so all those things I remember, and we put it in categories: things to keep, which was a small group; things to sell; things to give away; and things to throw away.
Right. But
Um,
in that keep section, there was stuff that we were taking from the
yeah,
home into the RV.
absolutely.
And I realized that our lifestyle was going to have to change. In the Speaking of the kitchen, we had various serving bowls and different theme stuff and different things for cooking different ways. And we had to reduce all of those Keurigs and Instapots and different types of cooking utensils and cooking appliances to one crock pot, because
Yeah,
that's what we made our decision to do. So we did keep some of the stuff in the for the RV. We did keep some stuff that was more sentimental and everything in a storage building. We did give a lot of stuff away. Most of my clothes were donated to the Fort Bend County Women's Shelter.
right.
So we did do some that, and we did have to invariably, we did sell some stuff, and we did throw some stuff away that probably deserved to be thrown away years ago.
Yeah.
So it was a good purging process. Let's put it that way.
Well, and the
Not
other
the
thing
easiest,
I would
but
add to people about getting rid of your stuff is that your kids don't want your stuff.
mhm.
I mean, Jason really did not want anything of ours. We asked him to keep a few things. One very important thing that we had a marriage covenant thing that we signed years ago, and that he signed with us. We asked him to keep that for us, and then he stores my guns and bows and stuff like that. But they really didn't want anything, and I think that's a lesson for a lot of people. If you're going into it, that you might want to keep in mind is that not a lot of people want your stuff. So,
Mhm.
but I said I had a good time doing it. It was fun watching stuff go out the door and people hand me cash. I enjoyed that part of it. So,
So
um,
true.
And I think it helped us think about what do we really need in life, what's really important, and what's not
Mhm.
important. So,
Yeah, and I think this is one that I've heard a lot of people talk about that I think needs some deep diving into,
yeah,
because I think other people anticipate this is going to be a struggle for them.
yeah,
And it's not always the women, it might be the man, it might be the struggle between what could be perceived as minimalism and holding on to stuff. So I think this is one of those that with time we'll do some more deep diving into this, because this is something that I think people really do want to spend some time considering. It might work that both people are fine with getting rid of their stuff, but a lot of times I think this is a source of conflict.
yeah. I think this is what keeps a lot of people from actually doing it,
Hmm.
for sure. So, let's see here. Question number 4 we get asked a lot is, how do you decide where to travel? And babe, I'm gonna give a basic breakdown of what our plan is in general, and of course plans are all made to be rearranged, but our basic plan is we spend about a third of our time down here where we are right now in South Texas. We are in Aransas Pass, Texas, about 30 miles from Sinton, Texas, where Christy's mom and dad live, and we spend some time down here, a significant amount of time down here, taking care of them and being around them and helping them out. We really enjoy that. It's as you said, in other words, a blessing to be able to do that. They're both in their 80s, and it's fun to be able, and that's the son-in-law speaking here. It's fun to be down and be able to take care of them and be around them and everything. I love that a lot. And then we have our kids and grandkids, Jason and Caitlin, our son and daughter-in-law, and 3 grandkids, Lachlan, Beckham, and Decker, live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And in the past, our plan has been to be there about a third of the time. And we're actually altering that a little bit as we find out the kids grow older, they're busy, and we can probably see them in more effective ways moving forward. But we spend about a third of our time there with them, and then we spend about a third of our time traveling around the country, seeing this, like I said in the last podcast, this amazing country that we live in. And the way we plan these trips is we kind of have a general idea where we want to go as the base. The first year we went to Maine. All right, we're going to spend a month in Maine, but the trip was about a 3-month trip. So we took our time going up there, and babe, we saw some amazing things on the way up. I mean, Niagara Falls and the Football Hall of Fame, Baseball Hall of Fame, Hot Springs, Arkansas. I mean, just so many things that we saw on the way up. Churchill Downs. I mean, what else can you remember we saw on the way up to Maine?
On the way up to Maine, I think because this was our first long journey, it was so amazing to see every little step.
Yeah.
But like you highlighted some of the Maine stuff. The reason we chose Maine was because I still had 3 states on my bucket list.
Right.
And then I would have seen all 50 states. So by going to Maine, we got to check off Maine, New Hampshire, and my final state, which was Rhode Island. And we checked that off the bucket list. So that was how we decided to travel to Maine.
As well, too, you'd never seen the leaves change. You'd never been in the east in the fall to see the leaves change.
Not for a substantial period of time.
One of the big reasons why we went up there. So we have these base reasons why we go. And the way we plan it is I will, put a pin in Bar Harbor, Maine, which is we stayed at Narrows 2 right across the water from Bar Harbor. And then I will chart a course up there, taking into consideration a number of things, places we want to see, things we want to do. We do a lot of crowdsourcing on Facebook by asking people, if you were going to go this route, what would you absolutely have to see? And we stopped in Lexington. We saw the Ark, and we went to a horse farm. In Niagara Falls, we did that. And we went to the original place where buffalo wings were first sold. So we just kind of make our way up there, and I chart that out. And then I get back with Christy and go, what do you think about this? How long do you want to stay here? How long do you want to stay there? Are we missing anything? And we will stay some places just a single night to get from point A to point B. But then we'll stay some places 2 or 3 days because we want to see some things, and our work schedules require that we're sitting still. Some places we stay for a week. Maine, we stay for a month. And while we were in Maine, we just hubbed out of the place there. And, babe, we went all over the place up in the Northeast there. The unfortunate thing was, because of COVID, we couldn't go over to Canada, which we wanted to do. But that's generally how we plan out our trips. This year, we're going up to the Grand Design National Rally in Indiana. From there up to 2 stops in Michigan, 1 stop in the Upper Peninsula, where we'll spend probably almost 3 weeks, about 3 or 4 days in the Dells in Wisconsin, and then over to Tennessee and spend some time in the Smoky Mountains, back through Dallas and Fort Worth out to Kerrville, where we are the wagon masters for a Grand Design Rally out there. And that's kind of how that trip got put together. Next year, my hope is to go to the Keys. We still want to go to the far Northwest. Babe, I think that's kind of an overview. What do you feel like your part is in all of that, and how would you add to how we go about planning our trips?
Well, a lot of times we follow the 330 rule.
Yep.
So we don't want to be driving longer than 330 miles if possible, and arriving at our destination no later than 3:30 in the afternoon. So because Jim does about 99.9% driving, I a lot of times will defer some of the decision making about how far we go and how long we stay to him, because that rests more on him. And I know that is a lot of responsibility, but it's also very taxing. So when it comes to like the destination and stuff, we collaborate on that together. Last year we went to Big Bend National Park in Texas, and staying within the state was fascinating because Texas obviously is a big state, but still so much to see and do on that trip. The year before that, 2021, we did a trip to the Grand Design Rally, and then we also went to the Grand Canyon. We saw the Mighty Five in Utah, and we kind of planned things along the route. But one of the things at the very end of the trip is it coincided with the Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta, and the timing worked out. So we made that one of the lucky things that happened along the way. Is we got to be a part of that. We got to volunteer for that, and such an amazing experience that we had.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's wrapped up around things we have on our bucket list, and we talked about, like for me, it was seeing in person the Grand Canyon. And then things serendipitously fell into our lap, like the Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta, like getting to meet Jim Jacobus from Kentucky, because he's a Facebook friend that Jim met. So there's a lot of things that once we get the bones of the trip done, then we'll come back later on and add the experiences to it, or we'll add the meat to it, if you will. So
yeah, and again, one of the things we've had to realize is there's so much to see, and we're never going to see it all. And so we try to do as much as we can without driving ourselves crazy. We like to keep the day trips relatively short, 330 miles would be set by 3:30. We did break that rule once, outrunning the path of a hurricane from Myrtle Beach back to Texas. We did a little over 500 miles 2 days in a row to get out of the way of the path of a hurricane that was coming through Louisiana. So anyway, that's kind of how we plan it. I don't know how you plan it or how you do it. We'd love to hear from you, what your thoughts are about all that. So here's what we're going to ask you to do, okay, is we want you to go to the Joyhauling Facebook group and join up, and then tell us where is it you would like to go on your next trip. Now, if you're a weekend warrior, tell us where your weekend warrior bucket list trip is. Where do you want to go see? What's the place around you that you want to go see, or where's the place you go all the time because it's your home park? We have one of those. Brazos Bend State Park is our home park. So either tell us that or tell us where you'd like to go for a 2-week trip, or if you're full timing, where you're going to go next. We want to hear that from you on the Facebook group. If you don't mind, we'd love to have you join over there. Keep track of what's going on, and we can meet you and get to know you, answer any questions that you have. If you don't mind, if we've earned it, please give this podcast a thumbs up, subscribe to it, and give us a 5-star rating. That will help other people find what we do, and we'd really appreciate that. So, babe, Traveling is a hoot, especially with you. I can't tell you how much it's fun planning these things. And like we said, we said last week, sometimes planning is as much fun as the going. Would you agree?
I do. And being that the travel part is when we first started this, I said it's called a travel trailer for a reason.
Yeah,
There are people who live in an RV full time and they do that for work concerns or work opportunities, and that's great and everything. But I love the fact that we use this also as a means by which to travel and see this amazingly beautiful country.
absolutely. So safe travels, guys. We'll catch you next week on the podcast. Take care.
Bye for now.
Happy trails.